My name is Kenzie. I'm 22. I work at a bar. It's walking distance from my house. Not super close, about 2.5 miles, but I can manage to get there on foot. I don't currently have my own car, and I live in a small town, so my options are kind of limited. I get a ride, or walk, or bike. On this particular night, my shift started at 5 p.m., and I was scheduled to get off at 11. I was able to get dropped off by a friend, but I knew I was going to have to walk home after my shift. It's no big deal. I've done it before. My job isn't bad. I get some decent tips and have been saving up for a Jeep, so I won't have to walk much longer anyways. My shift is pretty good. I'm actually in a pretty good mood as the tips are really rolling in tonight. 11 p.m. hits, and I say goodbye to my 3 other coworkers who don't get off until later. I head out and start the 2.5-mile walk home. It's pretty cold, and like I said, this is a small town, and I live in the direction that heads away from the small city. I do have a cell phone, but the service is terrible up here. Sometimes I can get spotty service on my walk home, but other times just nothing. My home is down a dirt road that eventually enters a pretty thick forest. Between the bar and my house, there's only one single streetlight, and it's about a half mile away from the bar. I usually feel pretty safe on the stretch from the bar to the light, but the rest of the walk is in complete darkness. It's not my favorite. This is an extra dark night. It's a new moon and the fog is rolling in. So once I get a little bit away from the bar, I'm pretty much just seeing a few feet in front of me. It's not uncommon. I'm making pretty good time, and I see the streetlight approaching. Now, as I pass the light and start the 2-mile stretch in complete darkness, I decide to start humming songs to keep my mind distracted. A little while goes by, long enough to where the streetlight is now pretty far in the distance behind me. Suddenly, I hear something. It's behind me, in the distance. Kind of sounds like the humming of a truck. Traffic on this road at this hour is pretty rare. Not many people live out in my direction, so I'm a little uneasy. The sound of the vehicle gets louder. Now I realize it's approaching the streetlight I just passed about 100 yards ago. Okay, calm down, Kins. Let's assume the driver must be someone who also happens to live down this road. I mean, there are a couple other scattered houses out this way. As it approaches, it begins to slow down. Maybe whoever is driving it is just polite, I tell myself. I mean, you should slow down if you drive by someone walking, right? After nearly coming to a stop next to me, it suddenly accelerates and speeds off down the dirt road. I glance quickly at it from behind as it drives off. I can't really see in, but it looks like an older pickup truck, maybe 70s or 80s, but I can't tell the color in the dark, just that I've never seen it before. The truck keeps going. Now, past me, maybe 50 to 75 yards, and then brake lights. Why is it stopping right there in the middle of the road? Please just keep driving. 1 minute goes by, 2 minutes, what feels like 5 minutes, and it's still just idling there, about 50 to 75 yards ahead of me. At this point, I start to think, okay, do I turn back and try to run to the bar? Can I make it? Am I overreacting? Maybe they're just lost and trying to figure out where to go. I'm of course not going to keep walking towards home with the truck right there, stopped ahead of me. It sits for a couple more minutes. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, it starts to drive again, continuing away from me and disappears around the upcoming bend on the forest road. Geez, Kenzie, what am I so worked up about? It's a truck on a road. Chill out, I say again. But moments later, my worst nightmare is realized. The headlights reappear. They're coming back, around the bend, in my direction. Okay, I'm definitely not going to just be on this road when they pass again, and there is no way I can run the near mile back to the bar before the truck approaches, so I run off the road directly into the woods. I can't get too far in, though, before the truck gets pulled up and stops right where I was on the road moments ago. I made it maybe 50 feet into the forest, but now I'm frozen in fear. I drop to the ground behind the nearest tree and just curl up in a ball next to a bush. I'm thinking, if I run now, whoever it is will see me and probably be able to outrun me. I don't look now. I'm on the ground, curled up, but I can hear one of the doors to the truck creak open, and then I hear footsteps. Footsteps that sound like they are getting closer. I get the courage to slowly lift my head, and there he is. A man, maybe in his late 50s, and it looks like he has something in his hand. A stick, a tire rod, something long. I think I recognize him. He looks like a customer at the bar that night who had stayed an unusually long time, but I thought nothing of it then. I swear he left the bar like an hour before my shift ended, though. What is he doing out here now? I'm thinking maybe I can call someone, but if my phone lights up, he'll see me for sure. And even if I have service on my phone, no way anyone will get here in time. My only option is to stay curled up, hidden, and hope he can't find me. Just then he shouts,
"Where'd you go? I know you're over here. Come here for just a minute. I'm not gonna hurt you."
I hear twigs and branches rustling as he steps maybe 20 feet from my hiding spot. My heart is pounding so hard, I swear he is going to hear it. He continues searching around the area for what seems like another 10 minutes. Finally, I see him start to head back to the truck. He must have assumed I ran deep into the woods and was long gone. He got in the truck, started it up, and then drove back in the direction of the streetlight, and then on past the bar. I wait probably another 30 minutes in that exact spot without moving before I finally emerge and continue on my way home. I never told my parents. I secretly told my grandpa, though, the next weekend what had happened, and made him promise not to tell my parents. He found a way to lend me a little money so I could have enough for that Jeep's down payment. I don't know whatever happened to that man in the truck. I kept the job so I could pay back my grandpa and keep making payments on my Jeep while going to school. I never saw that man or truck again, so I assume he was just passing through town. I'm glad I never found out his true intentions that night. I work in a call center and get off work at 10 p.m. Usually there are 3 or 4 people who get off work at the same time, so I never really walk out to my car alone. Our office is right next to a college campus, and it's not a particularly dangerous area, but there are always people milling around outside. Last night, I had to stay late because our system wouldn't let me punch out. I had to wait for a manager to come and reset the time clock. This delayed me by about 10 or 15 minutes. When I was leaving, there was no one else around. I really didn't think of it, as I was tired and anxious to get home. We have an employee entrance on the side of the building. My car was parked on that same side, but it was quite a distance from the door. I went out the door and started walking towards my car. I was going through my phone, so I wasn't really paying attention. Then I heard someone yell.
"Hey there, girlie."
It was something I didn't really register. He repeated himself several times, so I looked up and saw a guy sitting in an old gray car. He was parked in the next row over, but there weren't many cars in the parking lot, so I could actually see him pretty clearly. He had his window down. He shouted again.
I said, "Hey there, girlie."
Just to give some perspective on this, I haven't been called girly in a while. I'm a 30-year-old, happily married woman. I'm a mother of 2. I drive a minivan. I'm not ugly, per se, but I don't usually pay attention to men, and I don't usually have men call out to me in parking lots. I wondered if he was talking to someone else, so I swung around to check, but he was making eye contact with me. At this point, I found the whole thing amusing and just wrote him off. He kept saying stuff, so I sped up and got to my van. I got inside and locked the doors. At this point, the guy had pulled out of his spot and drove off. I assumed he lost interest, so I just backed out and started to leave. I pulled around the corner of the building, and there was his car. He was idling in front of the main entrance. I thought he might have been there picking somebody up, but when I left the lot, he followed me. At first, I tried to tell myself that he was just trying to go home, but I noticed that he would follow me from lane to lane. Every turn that I made, he would follow. At this point, I started to panic. I kept trying to tell myself that I was just using the main road and that it could be that he just lived in the same direction. On my way home, I have to take this 2-lane road that is usually deserted at night. When he followed me onto that one, I started to get worried. I called my husband. He told me to turn into our friend's subdivision and see if he followed me there. I turned in, and so did he. At this point, I was freaking out. My husband told me not to come home. He was putting the kids in the car and he would meet me at a gas station that was halfway between our house and where I was at. I turned around in the cul-de-sac. He followed me around it and back out onto the deserted road. I was crying and he was following really closely. I was afraid he would try to run me off the road. The guy kept flashing his lights and moving into the other lane. He never tried to pass me or even get up even with me. I don't know what game he was playing. My husband was on the phone with me trying to keep me calm. I finally reached the gas station and pulled in next to our other car. This guy pulls in and pulls up behind my car, blocking me into the spot. At this point, my husband jumps out of the car and starts walking towards him. My husband is not a tough guy, but he can be intimidating when he needs to be. At that point, the guy peels out and takes off, going in the opposite direction. I don't know what he was planning, but it definitely scared me. I let my manager know that it happened, and they are going to have the building security keep an eye out for him. As for me, I will not be walking out alone again. If I ever have to stay late, I was told that security can walk me to my car. This was definitely the scariest thing that has happened to me in a long time. Back in 2014, I moved to England from Canada to gain work and travel experience. I also wanted to find myself. I ended up living in Essex with 3 other roommates. They were all women, all a little bit older than I was. I was 23 at the time. Sarah was 27, Penny was 29, and Riley was 32. Sarah was from California, Penny from New York, and Riley from Australia. All 4 of us shared this 3-story flat. The back of our home was the living room and kitchen. The back wall was complete glass that looked out into the garden, and the garden was completely fenced in. The house had an interesting dynamic, to say the least. I adored most of my roommates. Penny, I had a hard time with. After living with Penny for 7 months, I was over her antics. One day I came home from work, locked the door, and made myself something to eat, then got ready to go up to bed. I brought some work home with me, so I am in my nightie with all these papers around me and my headphone on, jamming out. I am working away, completely focused, until I feel something. I look up to see a man standing over me. I don't register it right away and passively say, "Penny's room is on the 2nd floor," and continue to work. Penny regularly brought strange men home, so this wasn't too weird. He didn't leave. Again, I say, "Penny's room is downstairs," and then he interrupts.
I'm not here for Penny.
A cold chill iced my veins. My fight or flight kicked in just then, and I started surveying the situation. I looked him up and down. He has a bottle of Prosecco in one hand and a knife in the other. He is about 5'10", wild, muddy brown hair and black eyes. He has a light blue polo shirt on, and one side of his collar is popped up. He has a distinct Manchester accent. Once I focused in, I realized his eyes were black because his pupils were completely dilated. Shoot, I was in trouble. I needed an escape plan. Unfortunately, this man was standing in between me and my bedroom door. I needed to get downstairs, but I needed for him to think it was his idea, so I decided to play along. Just then, he uses his knife to pop the cork. Prosecco started flowing onto my carpet. I said, "Oh no, let's clean that up. I prefer to drink out of a proper flute anyways." He nodded, replying,
Yeah, you're a proper classy girl.
I tried to act as natural as possible. I tried not to show him that I'm shaking all over and trying to gain control of my breathing. We take the long journey down to the main floor of my flat, all 3 floors. He has the back of my nightie bunched up in one hand, and I could feel the point of the knife graze my back with his other. I was trying to playfully speak with him as we walked down the stairs. I couldn't tell you what I was saying, most likely just rambling. I couldn't hear anything over my heart beating in my ears. We got to the bottom of the stairs, and there is a hallway to my left that leads to the front door. On my right, which is much closer to us, is the kitchen and living room. We made our way into the kitchen, and I point to the cabinets that had the wine glasses. He said he knew where they were and starts towards them. Now I had the kitchen table in between us, and it was time to run. I burst into a sprint down the hallway towards the door. My hands fumbled over the lock, shaking and sweating. I swung open the door and see 2 men walking across the street. They must have been walking home from the train station by our home, so I called out to them for help. Suddenly, from behind, I'm flung to the ground. Little pebbles piercing my skin sent sharp pains where they jabbed. The intruder had pushed me out of the way to run and escape. One of the men chased after the intruder, while the other said for me to go inside while he surveyed my home and to call the police. I locked the doors and I called the police. While I'm on the phone with dispatch, I manically run around the house to double check that all the windows and doors are locked. Suddenly I hear a loud bang on the door. I inform the dispatch of the banging and she informs me that the police weren't there yet. I naively thought it might be one of the gentlemen who had helped me, so I go to look out the eye hole, but it's him, the intruder. He came back. He's banging on my door, screaming that I had his glasses and that he was not done with me. I absolutely freak out. The dispatcher attempts to calm me down, but I am losing my ever-loving mind. She then said, "They're pulling onto your street now. You should hear their sirens," and I did, thank God. The intruder then blasts off. One officer jumps out of the passenger side while the car is still moving and chases after him. The second officer comes into my home. He interviews me and the two gentlemen, collects evidence, and takes photos. After some time of him being there, Penny comes home and freaks out. Once the situation was explained to her, she said, "Oh my God, that could have been me." Yeah, thanks, Penny. It's all about you. The next morning, I am called in to identify a man that I had in custody. I pointed him out. I go into a little room and the officer pulls out an evidence bag. He asked me if the items were mine, and they were. There were my underwear and photos taken from my home. The officer informed me that the intruder had been stalking me for some time now. He estimates at least 3 months. He had made a nest outside of our home on top of a hill that overlooked into our living room and kitchen. He is a known sex offender and drug dealer. He then told me how lucky I was to get out practically unharmed. Others hadn't been so lucky. I hope I never see that man again. However, I would love to run into those two gentlemen who helped me that night. Every day, I'm thankful for them.